Latest news across Scotland. This is Jambo Radio. A new vision framework aimed at supporting future transformation and growth in Johnston Town Centre has been given the green light. A document was developed which captured the priorities of the local people and set out a long-term vision to encourage town centre living, enhance public spaces, support community activities and improve pedestrian and traffic movements. A 16-year-old boy was arrested after a woman was subjected to a serious sexual assault near the Hydro in Glasgow on Friday the 31st of May. Police received reports of a woman allegedly being attacked in the Congress Road area. Officers attended and the area was cornered off. The 16-year-old has been released pending further inquiries. Scottish Conservative leader Douglas Ross has said the Prime Minister's latest pledge on levelling up funding would be crucial for helping local communities in Scotland. Scottish National Party leader John Sweeney said the Conservatives' levelling up approach had not gone with the grain of the SNP's investment in the communities. Labour leader Anas Sawar said the policy was a slogan for the Tories and not a meaningful action. However, Douglas Ross has said the investment reaffirmed his party's commitment to focus on the real issues that matter to the people. Sir Keir Starmer has pledged to cut levels of net migration to the UK if his party wins the general election. The Labour leader said he would introduce new laws to train British workers to plug skills gaps in the job market and strengthen anti-exploitation laws. Although he did not give a time frame, he said, "Mark my words, a future Labour government will bring down net migration." And now for African news. South Africa's African National Congress has said they will not consider any demands from possible coalition partners that President Cyril Ramaphosa should step down. The ANC Secretary General Fikile Mabula said Ramaphosa would remain as party leader and any demands from others that he resign for talks to go ahead was a no-go area. And that's the latest from Jambo Newsroom. I'm Andrew Bainey.
Established in 2006 as one of Glasgow's original mobile massage therapists, we deliver high-quality treatments with the ambition to forge permanent relations with clientele. We specialise in on-site massage, a type of treatment that has been specifically designed to complement the convenience and availability of massage at work. It is performed with the use of a specialist mobile chair, without the use of oils or the need to remove clothing. At Massage and Glow, we believe that massage should be a part of your everyday lifestyle. Regular massage not only relieves stress and tension, but also stimulates blood circulation, can help with pain management, and promotes good mental health. A must for your busy schedule. Various holistic therapies available. Contact us now on 07530 905 152 for your mobile massage therapist.
Need security? Call Alpha One Plus Limited, a strategic security resourcing platform that connects you with licensed security personnel. We cater for our clients' security needs, from manned guarding, door supervision, event security, all the way up to close personal protection. Alpha One Plus Limited, your one-stop security solution. Call now at 44-074-2526-7909 or send us an email on info@alphaoneplus.com.
On your mobile phone and on all social media platforms. Jambo Radio.
Hello, and welcome to TouchPoint with Tayo on Jambo Radio, the show where everything matters. I'm your host, Tayo Oweye. And on TouchPoint, We explore vital issues that concern Africans in diaspora and beyond. We educate minds, address trendy issues. We actually engage African realities. So today on TouchPoint with Tayo, we're looking at global shifts in immigration permits, recent changes, and their consequences. I have with me in the house, not actually in the house, but is in the house here, all the way from Canada, joining me live from Canada in a Jambo Radio Scotland studio, here in the heart of Glasgow, Olufemiloye Olu of, he's probably called Olu of Canada, and is a social entrepreneur, public servant, a public analyst in Canada, a doctoral research fellow at the University of Saskatchewan. I hope I pronounced that very well. And he also obtained his master's from the same university as an international dean scholar. His specialization is at the intersection of public policy, economic development, and capacity building for newcomers and other underrepresented groups in Canada. Holu, you're welcome to TouchPoint with Tayo.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for having me today on TouchPoint. I'm very glad to join you here today and excited about the discussion we'll be having today. Thank you.
Wow, it's good to see you. Olu, how are you doing?
I am doing very fine. I mean, it's spring in Canada right now. Summer is coming.
Wow.
We're excited about a very warm summer, and we're looking forward to having a very, very amazing and interesting summer this year.
Wow. We are also getting into summer here, and hopefully we'll be having the same experience. So viewers and listeners, you can join the conversation live on Jambo Radio Scotland on our social media handles. You can watch live. As you're watching live, I'm sure quite a number of people are watching live via the YouTube platform, Jambo Radio Scotland, and also on the Facebook platform, which is also on Jambo Radio Scotland. On X, which is formerly called Twitter, at jamboradio.scot, and on Instagram at jamboradio.scotland. You can also email us at jamboradio.scotland at info@jamboradio.scotland. Sorry for that. And send us your comments, send us your opinions, contributions on the topic of global shifts in immigration permits, recent changes, and their consequences. Olu, let me start with this. Recently, I was checking your IG platform, and there was a part where you held the red passport. How does it feel to have the red passport?
I think in Canada it's the navy blue passport.
It's a navy blue. Oh, okay.
Navy blue passport. I mean, it's a privilege that also comes with some rights and responsibilities as well. It feels so great. I'm going to be honest with you, especially for an individual like myself that has this global mindset of like tapping into global opportunities across the world and needs to move around, to travel to different countries very often. So that has given me access to more than 185 countries right now, where I don't need to apply for visa, or I can get visa on arrival easily. So very grateful to God, grateful to Canada for that opportunity as well.
Oh, wonderful. So no queuing up and no... You know all it is. you know all that is. And so when we come to the issue of today, as per the issue of global shifts in the immigration permits, I was reading recently a particular website that's called CFAT Show, which is a legal company here. I was talking about the changes that happened in several countries, like Bulgaria and Romania joining the Schengen area, Indonesia and Japan having the digital nomad visa Highland brought its visa changes out. Australia, Peru also had visa changes, and
Right.
definitely United Kingdom. But Canada also has so many
Yeah.
changes.
Right.
What were the main reasons for all these changes, or the motivation behind them?
I mean, the way I'd like to put it is that the only thing constant in life is change. So, what usually happens and the thought process that goes into some of those things is reviewing the impact that the existing laws and immigration policies have made in those countries in terms of like economic situation, population growth, pressure on like other resources like health resources, housing, especially that's a big one in Canada right now. I'm trying to see how they can modify things to keep up with recent realities while also still benefiting from the resources and the impact of like immigrants in their countries. I always tell people that immigration is a win-win situation, both for the host countries and for those newcomers and immigrants that are coming into those countries. And that's why when you look at things more deeply, you find out that even though for a lot of us from like developing countries and all that, those countries are appealing to us, significantly. But if you look at it deeply, in Canada, for instance, you find out that up to 65, 70% of new permanent residents every year are economic immigrants. Those are people who have like the skilled work experience, the education, the language ability, and the likes that can help the country also take care of like shortages in terms of like the labor sector as well. So just like the immigrants are helping the country, and the country is also of benefits, economic benefits to those immigrants, it's a win-win situation. So when they look at how well have the existing immigration policies fared and how can they modify things, or do they need to target more sectors of the economy, then you see some of these changes coming into play. The one that we can also not overlook is the political situation of things as well. If you look at things like in Canada, there's an election coming most likely next year. In the UK, there's an election coming next month. In the US, there's an election coming in November. In Australia, there's an election coming. See that a lot of these political situations also influence the policies and programs of political parties as well, because they also want to use that as an opportunity to appeal to the electorate.
Yes. Thank you so much. I mean, you've actually laid that foundation. First is that migration or immigration issues is a win-win situation both for home and the host country. I mean, and knowing very well the issue of election and the appealing to the electorates around, so many talks are going on around, and those are quite revealing in terms of the reasons and the motivations for these changes. But if we look at the international perspective, how do these recent changes influence migration policy trend, especially towards African migrants?
Towards African migrants, it's a very, very challenging one from us because the system is already rigged against us in some ways. We are among the highest sets of individuals that are very much interested in these global opportunities. The place where it's mostly rigged against us is in terms of like the financial impact of it for a lot of people that will be applying from back home. Let's say like from Nigeria, where I am from, for instance, if you take into consideration one of the key changes that Canada made to the immigration policy, especially for like international students, is to increase the amount of money that is required in terms of what you need to show as your living expenses to come to Canada to study. When you compare that to the economic situation and the exchange rate right now, it places a much more higher expectation on individuals that are planning to apply here and take advantage of those opportunities. So that's been a big part of some of the things we've been hearing from people in our community around like how the financial situation of things right now and the increase, the changes they've made. We're in the UK as well. For certain categories of visas, they also increased the expectations in terms of like the income or the money you should have. We've seen increases in application fees happen in some of these countries as well, which places excessive or higher expectations on a lot of our people back home. The other part of it that we can also not overlook or underestimate is the remittance part of it. So for a lot of countries like Nigeria, Ghana, and the likes, remittance from people in the diaspora is a significant amount of money that contributes into the economy in these countries back home. And you find out that in the place where lower numbers of people are now able to actualize their immigration dreams and goals of moving to those countries, it impacts significantly what the remittance can also be that they are able to send back home as well.
Yeah, we'll still come back to the issue of remittances because this sometimes are a two-way, two-pronged issue in terms of how it does affect the home and the host country. But looking at that international perspective, what lesson do you think African countries can learn from these global immigration shifts and changes?
Right. I think one of the big lessons we can learn from it is that, like I mentioned earlier, immigration is a win-win situation. It benefits both the host countries and also the immigrants. So a lot of these international opportunities and these countries benefit significantly from us, especially if you look at the education perspective. The amount of money international students, for instance, in Canada contribute close to $21 billion to the Canadian economy every year. They support more than 160,000 jobs on a yearly basis.
That's
and
huge.
If you look at the quota of like African immigrants or international students of African origin that are contributing to that $21 billion, that's a significant amount of money that can go into investment into educational infrastructure back home as well. So these countries, developed countries, are using what they already have to get more of what they need. And that should be a big lesson to our leaders back home in Africa as well. Developing educational infrastructure, prioritizing, those opportunities, so that at some point maybe we'll also get to the states where we can attract people from other continents and other parts of the world, and that could serve as a significant revenue generation platform for us as well.
So in terms of our countries, African countries, they need to just upgrade their games and have a much more focused educational listen. But in terms of even them upgrading their games at the present times, would you say that educational standard is worthwhile, that people can really stay back at home rather than just in terms of jackpotting, people just want to move?
Right. I think that's part of the conversations we need to have with ourselves back home. We can do much more better. I strongly believe, I did my first degree in Nigeria. I went to a government-owned university in Nigeria, and I strongly believe even the little we learned back then, back home, found the foundation that we were able to build on when we moved out to other countries to do graduate study and all that. But that doesn't mean there's no room for improvement. We have a lot of work to do in investing in educational infrastructure, in overhauling our curriculum of study to make it at par with international best practices and standards, to invest money in faculty education and research and those other things that can make us level up and be at par with other international universities as well. So while we have the little to form the foundation on, there's still so much work to be done to build on those foundations as well.
Oh, thank you, Olu. So many perception and reactions towards the news of immigration changes, and I'd like to have your points on the views of public reactions to these changes in immigration policy. How do you think people how have different people reacted to it? So many noise around about it. Is it the noise of joy or the noise of of a sadness that, oh, they have caught the gate for me? What would that reaction look like to you?
It's always mixed reactions depending on which side of the coin you have. So if you're a prospective international, I'm going to use Canada as an example.
Yeah.
One of the changes that was made to Canadian international student program recently was that in the past, all levels of studies can come with their family members, their spouses to get spousal open work permits, and the children to also attend schools in Canada. But recently, they made changes to that, sometimes in March, and now not all levels of studies can allow you to come with your spouses while you are still a student or currently studying. So for someone that has been making, and they made the change in March, it was announced the same day, it became effective the same day. So for someone that has been planning to maybe start their program in May and apply with their family members, their spouse to get a spouse open work permit, that's going to be a very, very disappointing and discouraging news for them. So depending on the side of the coin you are, what we've seen in recent times is that the reaction to those changes are always mixed reactions. One of the other part to also consider is the effect that that would have on like employers of labors in countries like Canada as well. We've heard from some employers that are, that they've aired their grievances against the government that, we were not adequately informed or carried along or prepared to to prepare for these changes, and they just came, and it's going to affect how we can recruit labor for some positions and all that as well. But for some people that are probably not really um, in support of having newcomers in the country, those ones welcomed it with open and believe it was the right thing to do. So it's not surprising that depending on how you feel about immigration or at what point of the application process you are in, the reaction to those changes are always depending on how you see things or how things could be of potential benefit to you as well.
Oh, thank you. Knowing very well that quite a number of migrants are those who had probably legal, they had legal status to actually migrate, aside from, according to IMO, that says 117 million out of the 281 million people who had migrated, where displaced because of violence, terrorism, conflicts, and natural disaster. However, some of the public reaction seems to be driven by sensationalized narratives, just according to them. And that was a recent publication by IOM, May 7th, 2024. So, would you say that most migration discourses are full of misinformation and politicization? Clouded within this public discourse, even scholars and some religious leaders. In terms of that, do you agree with that, and would you think it's still full of misinformation and politicized? Is a politicized discourse?
To some extent, I would agree with the fact that there's a lot of misinformation out there. It is part of the reasons why we started what we do in our own community and platform to share, unbiased information with people, to let even our people from back home, the immigrant community, be well informed and be able to make the informed choices. There's no doubt sensationalism out there. It also plays to the political aspect of things, of people wanting to seek the political support of certain demographics in their country and just kind of like misinterpret data or over sensationalism of things out there as well. So a lot of that happens, and I think that's where those who are well informed and have access to more information, discourses like this, platforms like this, where we have to try as much as possible to demystify some of those misinformation and make sure we are painting a accurate picture and putting out, accurate information to members of the public.
Oh, wow. Thank you. Thank you so much, Olu. We've dealt with some of the big things. So, but after the break, we will go into much more deeper issues that concerns individuals, groups, families, and we'll just dive into much more deeper issues. Please, viewers and listeners, stay tuned. We're going on a break right now.
Do you live in North Lanarkshire? Are you looking for a job? Are you looking for funding and support to start your own business? Well, if you're a parent and you live in North Lanarkshire, that's towns such as Cumbernauld, Shotts, Wishaw, Bellshill, Kilsyth, Motherwell, Coatbridge, Moodisburn, etc., then PeoplePlus can help you. PeoplePlus are running the North Lanarkshire Working for Families program. At PeoplePlus, we have brilliant employment and self-employment opportunities for parents who live in North Lanarkshire. On the Working for Families program, we support parents who live in North Lanarkshire by preparing you for employment or assisting you in starting successful self-employment. We have various accredited training courses that we can fund and put you through, and this will certainly help you in your employment journey. If you've been toying with the idea of starting a business, we'll be happy to help you start up. If you already have a business you've started, we'll be very happy to help you with funding, advice, etc. We're flexible and we will work around your schedules, as being a parent takes priority, of course. If you like a full-time or part-time job, some training, a placement, etc., we can support you, prepare you, help with your CV needs, interview prep, training needs, and job opportunities. So how do we help you with self-employment, you ask? Well, you get a dedicated and experienced business advisor to support you with a range of self-employment topics, such as marketing and pricing, business research, market research, access and finance, bookkeeping and accounting, HMRC and company registration, tax and VAT, sourcing suppliers, expert advice on efficiently reporting your earnings to HMRC, establishing or diversifying your customer base, and access to other support networks. We also help with employability by giving you a dedicated key worker who will support you and guide you through the process of finding suitable work, help with training and accreditation, customized support to suit your needs, support to write or upgrade your CV, expert advice and techniques for interviews, including mock interviews, assistance with job applications, and help with job searches. Eligibility to join the program. You must be a parent and you must live in North Lanarkshire. Just contact BB McKinley at email scotland.ef@peopleplus.co.uk. That's scotland.ef@peopleplus.co.uk, or call the number 07814 061 565. That is call or text 07814 061 565. Contact us today and we'll be happy to support you into work or self-employment.
On your mobile phone and on all social media platforms, Jambo Radio.
Welcome back to TouchPoint with Tayo on Jambo Radio Scotland. Thank you for staying tuned. I'm still here and still have my guest with me in the studio, Olufemi Loye, aka Olu of Canada. Olu, you still there?
Yes.
Okay. So for our viewers, please, you can send in your comments sending your contributions to these issues that we are discussing right now. But I'm glad to tell you that this is just the part one of the discussion that we're doing. I'm sure quite a number of people want something deeper. But I've also had some discussion with Olu, who has graciously agreed that we're going to have some coaching and counseling session for 5 people for now, who are willing to have some counseling session concerning whatever immigration issues they may be having. I mean, even if you are here in the UK, you are also free. You can go to our TouchPoint Instagram page and drop in your message. The first 5 will be the one that we will get into that room to discuss with. This does not have any fee attached to it. We don't do anything for fee. We just want to help humanity, just as Olu has made mention earlier on. So thank you. We're still on our issues on global shifts in immigration permits. Olu, can you let us know some of these changes, especially to Canada? Some of the changes that those immigration shifts that are occurring in Canada right now. Which one is actually in effect, that is working right now, that is in motion, and the one that is yet to kickstart?
Okay. So I believe all of the key changes that Canada made are effective already right now, except for some. I think the big one that is not effective kind of will start in September, but I'm going to talk about them quickly. Number one is that the aim of the changes that were made to the Canadian immigration program, especially as it affects temporary residents, was before we don't have a cap or a restriction on the numbers of temporary residents that can come into Canada on an annual basis. In the past, we used to set a quota for like numbers of new permanent residents, but in January, we introduced those quotas to temporary residency category as well. So there's a 35% decrease in the numbers of international students that Canada is hoping to welcome this year compared to the numbers we welcomed last year. So this year, we're hoping to welcome approximately 360,000 new international students. Wow. 292,000 will go to colleges and undergraduate programs, and the remainings are expected for master's and PhD programs. Wow. So that's the big one. Last year, I think we welcomed close to maybe 400 and something or 500,000 new international students. So there's a decrease in that to 360,000 international students this year. One other thing that we've also introduced is the provincial attestation letter system, which in the past, if you get an admission to come to Canada to study, you don't need to do any other thing than use that admission and acceptance letter to apply for your study permit. Now, except you're coming for a master's or a PhD, if you're going for an undergraduate program, a college program, after getting your admission letter and letter of acceptance, you now also need to get a provincial attestation letter, which speaks to the fact that you've been accounted for in the quota that has been assigned to that province for the year. So the 360,000 new international students expected this year have been distributed across the 10 provinces and 3 territories in Canada. So except you're coming for a master's and PhD, you now also need to get the attestation letter. Well, a lot of provinces have made the process for that very, very easy. The students themselves do not need to apply. So it's the institutions that will apply for the provincial attestation letter and give it to the students they've admitted into their program. That's why, this is going to happen on a first come, first served basis. We always tell people, make AY the sunshine. If you're looking at 2024 in Canada, you need to apply early before your institution would exhaust the provincial attestation letter they have. One of the other changes that have happened that I touched on earlier, from March 19, spouses of masters and PhD students and spouses of students doing professional undergraduate degrees, like a Bachelor of Science in Nursing, Bachelor of Engineering, and the likes, those are the ones that their spouses can get a spousal open work permit while the student is studying. Other students doing diploma programs, college programs, college certificates, and the like, they will have to wait until those students have graduated, gotten their postgraduate work permits before the spouses can get a spousal open work permit. But that doesn't mean the spouses cannot come to Canada with them as well. They can come on a visiting visa, they can look for employment and get an employer-specific work permit and the likes, but they can't get a spousal work permit. The big change to that I would add quickly, in the past, if you do a 1-year program in Canada, you get a 1-year work permit as a student. If you do a 2-year program in Canada, you get a 3-year postgraduate work permit. But right now, for master's degree, even if you do a 1-year master's degree, this is a very beneficial change. You will still get a 3-year postgraduate work permit. That's one of the
Excellent.
additional changes they've made that is much more beneficial, especially for master's degree students. And that speaks to what I mentioned earlier, that they review some of these policies and changes and see, oh, we need more of master's degree students that are doing research, that are doing, programs that contribute to the labor market, and they want to encourage those ones to come. That's why they've made that positive change as well. In addition to that, we've also introduced the quota for like temporary residents in Canada. That has never happened before. So we're hoping that it's going to reduce the number of like temporary residents in Canada by 20%, in the next foreseeable future. So temporary residents are like international students and then temporary foreign workers as well. One of the changes that has also happened recently is a change to the amount of money you need for the living expenses in Canada. In the past, if you're coming to Canada to study, you only need to show that you have up to 10,000 Canadian dollars in addition to your tuition fee. So your living expenses 10,000, your tuition whatever the school has set the tuition to be. But right now that has increased to 20,635 Canadian from
Wow, that's huge.
$10,000. Those are
That
like
is
some
huge.
of that exactly. So that's why I mentioned earlier that part of the impact is like the financial expectation and additional expectation that has placed on a lot of like immigrants. And then when you think of like countries back home where the exchange rate is also not favorable, it means a lot of money for many people right now. But we are hoping in Canada's situation, these policies, they've stated that they're going to be in place for 2 years. So which means we are going to get a review in the next 2 years or thereabout, when they've seen what the realities are saying at that time, and if there's a need to relax things a little bit or make certain changes as well.
Let me quickly ask this in terms of finance. For someone who
Yes.
had gotten admission and had applied for visa and was turned down, what could have been the issue?
It's a number of reasons. So for Canada, when your visa is refused, you get a refusal letter that will just highlight the point. However, there's a file you can request for. We call it the Global Case Management System file, which is the GCMS notes, that will speak into details of why your application was refused, whether you did not have sufficient funds. So when making a decision on a study visa application, there are 3 things as stipulated by the Immigration Refugee Protection Act that the visa officers will focus on. Number one is the purpose of coming to Canada to study. Is your education, are you able to defend or justify why you want to come to Canada as an international student? Is your education a reasonable expenses? Is it showing either career progression or academic progression, or you're making a change in career? For instance, let's say somebody that has a master's degree already, and then you're saying you want to come for just a 1-year undergraduate diploma in the same area where you have a master's degree. That's not a convincing progression, except you have a good justification to come and do that level of study and program. The second one is that you have sufficient amount of money to defray the cost of studying in Canada without having to work. Even though as an international student, the opportunity is there for you to work part-time while the school is in session and full-time when the school is on scheduled break. But they don't want you to give the impression that it is the work you're coming to do that you want to use to support yourself. So you must be able to show that ab initio, before you get into Canada, there's sufficient amount of money to cater to your study. The fund is genuine, it is accessible to you. Even if you are using a sponsor, you can still have access to the fund, and it is available as of when you will need the fund. So that's the one that a lot of people struggle with, especially when they're using a third-party individual. If I'm saying the uncle of my brother would be the person that is supporting my education, has the person done that in the past? Have they been able to show financial support for me in the past? Do I have documented evidence of that? In addition to that, how much do I need? How much do they have? You understand? And if they take out the money I need, do they still have enough funds to take care of other financial obligations they have? You know, and what other commitments have they made? Have they helped me to pay tuition? Have they released the funds to me? Things like that are some of the things to take note of. And then lastly is that you have sufficient socio-economic ties or family ties back home, things that will compel you to leave Canada if your visa expires today and you are not able to move into another status. So that's also a very, very important one. You can talk about things like your employment prospect back home, your membership of social organizations, the family members you have, and things like that. So as long as you are able to convince and provide documents speaking to those three areas I mentioned, then you've increased the chances of getting an approval for your study visa application in Canada.
Thank you so much, Odu. And I think the issue of impact on immigrants had actually been dealt with those explanations. I would like to look at the impact of these changes. I mean, you can just choose how you want to deal with this, or of this new immigration policy, both on the host and the home country. You made mention about it more like TouchPoint on it, especially the economic and social consequences, either both on positive and negative side. How has it influenced or affected both host and home country, especially when you look at Canada?
Right. And so one of the areas I'm going to speak about the host countries, Canada, for instance. I mentioned earlier that international students contribute close to $21 billion on an annual basis to the Canadian economy. With a reduction in the numbers of international students that can come into the country, would invariably come a reduction in the amount of revenue they can bring into the country as well. And we've had this from a lot of like schools that are, released numbers and figures of how this would impact the amount of revenue they are able to make, and also how that may impact some programs. So we've heard from some institutions all over the news that, some of them would probably have to make the difficult decision of cutting out some programs or merging some programs with each other, which would also affect their faculty members. They have no other choice than to cut staff in some situations and lay off some people. Those are big impacts on the economy. We've also heard from employers of laborers that are very, very popular with recruiting temporary residents, international students to support their work. Or now this is going to make things even much more difficult for them. In Canada also, we also have to look at like the housing pressure, especially in places like popular provinces like Ontario and British Columbia. This is also going to have impacts on the housing situation. Maybe a little bit of positive impact because it will reduce the demand and the pressure on like housing infrastructure in those places. But a lot of people have also advocated that it is not a matter of like the demand on these things, but the supply side of things. So the supply side of things means which efforts or how much effort are we making or putting into building more houses and all that. And then when you talk about building more houses, you also have to talk about, do we have sufficient labor to even build those houses? So now that we are cutting the numbers of like temporary residents to come into the country, it would also affect the availability of labor to build these houses as well. You also find out that in certain communities in Canada, especially in communities that, are smaller communities, but they have post-secondary institutions, it is international students that account for the significant amount or number of population they have. So population growth in some of these smaller communities would also be affected. When I went to University of Saskatchewan to study, I ended up living in Saskatchewan. If I'd come directly, maybe as a permanent resident, I don't know if I would have deliberately chosen to stay in Saskatchewan for that long. But the school took me there. I integrated myself into the system. I decided to stay back. So if I had not gone there to study, I probably would not have gone there to live ab initio. So those are some of the things that impact. Of course, it's also going to affect the GDP of the country. Canada also being the second largest country in terms of landmass in the world, with a very, very small population. Statistics have shown that immigrants and immigration contribute up to 95% of like population increase in Canada. So because the birth rate is low and all that, and that is also going to be affected invariably as well. So those are some of the effects that this would have on the host country as well. Talking about the other side of the coin, it's also going to affect the number of individuals that can come from our own countries from back home, which would have an impact on remittance. If I had not moved to Canada, for instance, the amount of money I'm able to like support my people back home with, I probably would not be able to do that. So that's going to be a big impact as well. But if we look at the other side of things, that foreign exchange demand is part of the big, especially for like educational purpose, is part of the pressures we have on like foreign exchange demand from back home. So if not so many people are moving here, then maybe that would also reduce, the demand for this foreign exchange from back home, and we can also channel that into other things, also into other foreign direct investment and things like that. So if we look at some of these things critically, like I mentioned earlier, it's a win-win situation. There's no clear winner and there's no absolute loser on both ends of the divide.
Olu, if I would like to throw some points into that remittance issue, I was reading some statistics that between 2000 and 2022,
right,
the percentage of increase in international remittances was like 650%. I said, wow, within 22 years, 650% increase. But you know what? It means that it rose from $120 billion to $831 billion. It's huge.
That's a lot of money. Yeah,
it's a lot of money going back to African countries and all this, and most of this, these remittances, as at out of this 831 billion in remittances, $647 billion was sent to migrants in low and middle income countries. With the noise and the issue of people in quotes jackpotting, do you think with these recent changes, do you think it will be easy for remittances to be sent back home if there's a reduction in jackpot people? let me use that.
I think the amount of money would undoubtedly be affected. If not so many people are getting out, then the opportunity for so many people to send back, remit money back home would also be affected. The other side of the coin that I'd like us to probe further, maybe we can do some research on this, is
Yeah.
also the increase in the amount of money that have left our countries from back home to these places. As more students, compared to like 10 years ago, I don't think the numbers of Nigerian students going to the UK and
So
Canada to
huge.
study has been this huge, you understand? Which means even the money and a lot of these students, let's be honest with ourselves, would have to at least pay their first year tuition and things like that with money from back home. So I'd like to see how that has, the amount of money that has also, or the increase in the amount of money that is taken out of our country as well to this country, so that people can see again that I tell people, international students in particular, maybe because I have a bias, I came as an international student myself, they've been a blessing to many of these countries. You understand? The labor gap they fill in those countries, 170,000 jobs that international students fill in Canada on an annual basis. Those are gaps that, if there are no individuals to fill those gaps, the economy will feel it significantly. You understand? But that being said, back to the question you asked, even from back home, for people that are very, very critical about people leaving the country, my advice to them is that, exposure is very, very important. Not everyone who leaves to study outside of, let's say, Nigeria or Ghana would not return back home. The knowledge, the experience, the skills, the capabilities, the insights they see on how things are done in those other countries are things that a lot of people, myself inclusive, are very, very prepared and looking forward to the opportunity to go back home and impact on our own society as well. So that's the viewpoint I'd like a lot of people to look at things from, in terms of like, let's see this as a learning opportunity and the opportunity to learn how things are done in other places, in other countries, and what can we learn from those ways of doing things to address some of the challenges we are experiencing back home as well.
Yeah, as a policymaker, we're about to. We know we can't get this. There is a question I'm going to keep till next week because we're having part 2 of this discussion. Next week is going to be more of laid bare. Then we're talking about macro issues now and all those economic stuff now. And as someone had made mention on YouTube, that honestly, like I said, honestly, we need that study in terms of how much money, how much Africans have put in compared to the amount of remittances going back home. And that will be a very good research for those of us in the scholarly world to actually delve into. But how we're going to do this, we'll still talk about that. And looking at, because we'll be wrapping up now, looking at those issues of you had said you are hoping to come back home. I was having a discussion with Professor Olupon of Harvard today, and it was probably one of the scholars that talked about Japa and Japada in on the media, and we'll talk about that one next week, about it coming back home. Well, what will make people to come back home, come back to Africa? But let's look at the long-term consequences of these immigration policy changes. Do you think this immigration is still viable? Is a viable venture? For who will it be viable, and for whom will it not be unviable to?
I think for a lot of people, viability would also depend on so many things, but I always encourage people, when you look at the policies and programs in these countries, they are tailored towards skilled immigrants. So try as much as possible to situate yourself within what is in demand in those countries you are interested in going to. That's where it becomes much more productive for you and also beneficial for you. If we look at like studying outside the country, for instance, I always tell people going abroad to study is an investment. education itself is an investment. You are investing your time, your money to build your skills and all that. You want to be able to find opportunities that you can put those investments in skills and knowledge and expertise into. To situate yourself within what is in demand and what will be relevant in both your home country and the country you're going to. That's where it becomes very, very viable for you.
Okay.
If you're not within that aspect and you are thinking about that, that probably would be the first thing to think about and say, what are the skills and competencies I can build on? What are the experiences I currently have? What are the transferability skills I currently have as well that I can build on in terms of like when I go to these countries, what are those areas I can look into to own my skills further, and how beneficial would that be for both my host country and my home country that I'm going for? I think the way that a lot of people need to start looking at these things is just not from a survivor mentality, but from thriving mentality as well. It's not just about I just want to get out and carry my bag and jump. I understand like the frustration with a lot of people back home and now people are seeing things, especially from the economic viewpoint of things. But I'm urging a lot of our people to take things one step further and say, I'm just not going to this country to survive, but what can I do to also thrive when I go into that new country, or even if I decide to jackpada and go back home, what are the skills and competencies I can take back home? That's when this immigration journey would become much more viable for you as well.
Okay, Olu, someone just sent a text to me relating to the care route visa. Would you just quickly, just within a minute, touch point on that? In Canada.
And I believe the person is talking about the one in Canada. Again, it speaks to what I mentioned earlier around like a lot of these countries, they look out for what is in need in their country and how they can fill those needs. So just a couple of days ago, the Canadian Immigration Minister, the Honorable Mark Miller, announced that Canada is introducing 2 new pilot programs for home care workers, those who have experience as caregivers, that will give them permanent residence on arrival in Canada. We used to have a pilot program that is ending on the 19th of June or thereabout this year, that requires you to have worked in Canada for 1 year as a caregiver or have a job offer before you can apply. So they are making changes to that to make it much more beneficial for caregivers abroad, those who already have those work experience, to be able to apply and get permanent residence on arrival in Canada. So part of the requirements they've also done, they also reduced the language test requirement for that. It used to be like a Canadian language benchmark 5, but they are reducing it to a benchmark 4 right now. So you need to do a language test. The education requirement for that right now is just a senior school certificate. So just O-level is what they require for that right now. There are some other requirements. You need to have related work experience, but the application period for that program has not started. It's going to start in September. So between now and September, we'll get more detailed information on the requirements. But I'll say start preparing your language test, start preparing your work experience to show that you have maybe at least 1 year of work experience in that related area. And if you also need to do like degree assessment for the degree you have, start preparing that. And start also looking for like job opportunities in that area as well. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Olu. Parting shot. Olu speaks. 15 seconds.
15 seconds. Wishing everyone all the best in the application process. There are 3 P's I always talk about. I'd like to remind people hearing us. Plan. Very, very important. Plan your immigration process way ahead. Have a plan A for your plan B and a plan C for your plan B. Number 2 is following the due process. Very, very important. Don't let anyone mislead you into doing something that would come back to blow back on you and have a negative impact on your experience abroad. And thirdly is being patient. So plan ahead, follow the due process, be patient. Every good thing will definitely come.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Olu. Thank you, listeners and our audience. It's been a wonderful time. Thank you, my production crew here in the studio. Thank you, my backroom team. Thanks to everyone, and thank you for joining. And that's it for this week, ladies and gentlemen. Until next week, I will continue the discussion with Olu of Canada next week, but much more deeper and much more beautiful, insightful, and informative session next week. But remember, as I part today, that life's journey unfolds uniquely. You need to run your race to attract grace, because within that race, grace attracts, finds its own way. Being your host, Tayo Oweye. Join me next week for another exciting and trendy issue. Until then, I wish you good night and happy night rest. Thank you so much.
On your mobile phone and on all social